What's up, everybody, and welcome back. In the last video, we went over the basics of creating a form in Svelte and submitting that form. Since that video, I did do a little bit of updating to the form. I added an email input. I also laid it out a little bit differently so everything's not squished together. What I did is I put some divs around each of the inputs. And with those divs, I made the form display flex direction column, so it's up and down. Align items in the center, this way they don't hug the left of the screen. For the div, it has a class of input holder, a width of 100%, so that div takes up the entire modal. A margin, this way there's a little bit of space between them on the top and the bottom. And then I gave the inputs a width of 45% and then the button a width of 35%. This way it doesn't take up because the button would have taken up 100% of the screen. So now that that's out of the way, in this video, what I do want to do is I want to go over some of the additional inputs that you're going to use in your form. Specifically, those inputs are going to be a select, which will be good for the state. Now, I know state is an American thing, so if you're not in America, you would have to adapt this form for shipping to whatever your address scheme is. And also, I want to go over checkboxes and also how to group them if you have a couple of different checkboxes that go together. So to start, let's turn this state input into a select box. So what we're going to do is we're going to take out the type because it's no longer going to have a type. Select doesn't have a type. We're going to change this to select. It's no longer going to be a self-closing tag. And inside of a select, in order to show the options that you want in the dropdown, what you're going to do is you're going to put an option in there. And the option is going to have a value which is equal to whatever the value is. So for example, let's just say New York, and then you put New York in the option text. And then just so we have a couple, let's add in California, CA, and let's just say Washington. WA. Can't spell. Value Washington. Okay, so if we save that and we go back over here, you'll see we have our select box. Let's make it uniform with everything else. So select width 45%. So now we have our select box with the dropdown. And it is going to bind to that same value of state. So if we select that and we hit submit, you'll see undefined state CA. So rather than typing out each option, what we're going to do is, since we have 50 states in the United States, I grabbed this states array off of GitHub. So let's go put this in and we're going to do const states equals, and just to make sure it's right, states.length. Would help if I could spell. So console log states.length. 59 states. I guess that includes American territories. We'll just go with it. So now in order to get these states into the select, what we're going to do is we're going to delete this console.log. And we'll set up a default option that once you change it, you can't reselect it. So what we'll do is we'll make this value blank. And we're going to do selected and disabled. And then for this, we're just going to have the placeholder of state. This way it tells you what you're supposed to enter here. We're going to delete these two options. We're going to create a each, and it's going to be states as state. And then we'll close that. And inside of here, we're going to have option with a value. With a value equal to state. And then inside of here, we're going to have it say state. And if we save that and we go back over here, you'll see that it says state. And that's your disabled default option that you can't reselect. And then you have all of your states within the select. So if we were to say select Colorado and we hit submit, you'll see that it does update the state to Colorado. So that's the two ways to do the select. You're either going to have a bunch of different options within the select element, or you can do an each where it just loops over an array or an object and it puts those options into the select for you. And the last type of input I want to go over is checkboxes. So what I want to do is I'm going to create a div here. And we're going to give that a class of and inside of this div, this checkbox group class, we're going to have an input with the type equal to checkbox. We'll give it a break. This way it goes to the next line. And we're going to have another input type equals checkbox. And we'll have another break. And what I want these checkboxes to be are, this one's going to be I accept the terms and conditions. Now, usually this would have a link to the terms and conditions for your website. I'm not really sure it really applies to a store scenario, but it just does give us a way to have an additional checkbox. And please use my email for marketing. Please use my email to send. So basically, it's just an opt-in to allow us to use this person's email to send them any marketing emails and things like that. Now, in order to capture these, whether they're checked or not, what you're going to do is you're going to bind them to checked, and then you set that equal to, let's just set this to conditions opt-in. And then we're going to set a value, let conditions opt-in, so that it can capture that. And then for this one, we'll bind checked equals marketing opt-in. And we'll set that. Now, for these two values, you can set them, and that'll set the value. So, like, for example, you can do your conditions opt-in to true, but make sure you know the rules of your opt-ins for the specific countries that your application is going to be used in. For example, in the EU, you can't auto-check any of your opt-ins to true. They always have to be false, but we're just going to do this as an example, and we'll set this one to false. And if we hit save and we come over here, so this looks really awful. So let's just make it a little bit different. What I'll do is I'll throw this inside of a div and do the same for this one. We will delete this. We'll delete this. We're going to change this to have a class of text. So we'll grab this, put this here, 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 here. And we'll change the input tag. We'll change this to text. This way it only affects those text inputs so that the checkboxes, because the input is actually the checkbox, and this is just kind of like a label, so it's not part of it. So if you have a width of 45 on the checkbox, it's going to 45%, it's going to take up all that spot just for the checkbox. And then what we also want to do is we want to do dot checkbox group, and we're going to give this a display flex. We're going to flex direction column. This way it's up and down. And we are going to align items at flex start. This way they're at all the way to the left. And we forgot to remove this. I see the error in the background, so let's save that again. And as you can see, it looks a lot better. And since we have the value set to true, it's automatically checked. And then this one's set to false, so it's not checked. So if I were to like enter some information, so if we hit submit, you'll see in the console you have all your information. And we are not console.logging the so if we save that and we hit submit, you'll see that you get your true and false values. Now, sometimes your checkboxes are going to be part of a group, so let's work on that. Like, let's just say we wanted these two checkboxes to be in the same group. So what you can do is, so let's delete these two and we'll make a group to store these values in. So what we'll do is we'll name it let opt-ins equals empty array. And what that'll do is that's going to make it so that you can have an array of the items. So if we change this to group and we name it the group opt-ins, and then we bind this to the group as well and name it opt-ins. And for this one, we'll give it a value of, and this one will give it a value of and then we change this console.log to be the group name and we save that. What you'll see is neither one is checked because we didn't set them to be. So if we check one and we hit submit, you'll see that the value goes into an array. And if there's a value in there, that means that that option was checked. If we do the other one, you'll see you get both items in the group. So that's how you group them together. It makes it a little bit easier if you have a bunch of different checkboxes that are part of a group, like an opt-ins group, to just keep that information rather than just getting true, false submitted into your backend, and then you have to figure it out. So our checkout form for the shipping stuff is looking a lot more like a checkout form. I do hope you enjoyed the video. I will put the link for the states in the description to the GitHub that I took that from. And if you did enjoy the video, please like the video, subscribe to the channel. There's a lot more web dev information coming out here, and I hope to see you in the next one.